Yes. So I'm going to introduce our second presenter today. That's our very own Smart Coast consultant, Don Schmitz. He is the president and principal planner of Schmitz and Associates. His firm specializes in land development entitlements, strategic planning, project management, governmental affairs, and advocacy. He served as a Coastal Commission Southern Coastal District Principal Planner. Try and say that, any of you. He's also led startup of management representation, successful in. He's also been successful. He's also had successful entitlement of over 1,000 different development projects. He has been a benefit to us because he has really incredible working relationships with government planners, elected officials, and the Coastal Commission itself. Also, his expertise includes the Coastal Act, the California Subdivision Map Act, CEQA, NEPA, and fire safety issues as well as the water code. He has his education from bachelor's degree from UCSB, as well as a master's in geography and land use planning from Cal State Long Beach. Take it away, Mr. Don Schmitz. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everybody. I'm blushing a little bit. Thank you for the very gracious introduction there, Matt. Krista, you're in charge of our PowerPoint presentation. You there? Okay, so we're going to go over a number of topics. I'm going to try and keep it moving along here. We really appreciate everybody logging on. We have been very, very busy, both building an organization. I think you're going to see that not just building an organization, which doing something like this from scratch. And again, huge kudos to the board and especially to Marta and Krista for all the sweat equity and imagination that they put into making this a reality. But we've been trying to accomplish things at the same time we build the organization. We've met with groups, we've done public presentations, we've met with public officials, we've been very involved, and this is where the work part comes in with the sea level rise and local coastal program amendments with the different counties and cities up and down the state. We've provided assistance to the AORs and the GADs up and down the state, and that's been something that the board has been having a focus on in regards to us disseminating information to all those wonderful people up and down the state that know the community so well, and they're interfacing and interacting with the local city councils and board of supervisors. There's been a lot of publications. We're starting to get our feet wet in regards to our interfacing with media, and we want to talk to you a little bit about what's coming up in the future. So next slide, please. So why don't you just take these all the way down to the bottom, Chris. So we've been doing the coalition building. We've been monitoring the LCP updates weekly. We've assisted in those negotiations for balanced regulations. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I know Dr. Griggs. I hold him in very high regard. And I'm intimately familiar with the science which is involved, and as a geographer, understand the science involved within context. And one of the things that is going to be hugely important in regards to this, it's not all one camp or the other, where it's manage, retreat, or deniers. And that's just not the reality of the situation. We're talking about land use regulation. We're talking about private property rights. We're talking about reasonable application of policy. And what does that mean exactly? If you look in your mind's eye back to the presentation that Dr. Griggs just gave you, the end of the century anticipated sea level rise of 5.7 feet, that's a 1 in 200 chance of that happening. It's a very, very low probability. But you should know, all of you, that the Coastal Commission is requiring our cities and our counties to amend their local coastal programs to have 5 to 6 feet of sea level rise by the end of the century. So there is a bona fide conversation to be had in regards to what is the appropriate level of regulation, how to implement it. Can we have the next slide, please? And you can just, again, Chris, take these all the way to the bottom. So we've met with and formed a loose coalition with Reefer Retreat out of Southern California. And to Mr. Grisanti, who sits on our board, his question, we believe that reefs are, artificial reefs are a hugely important tool in the toolbox, as does this organization. The reason why they're hugely important is, as opposed to just armoring the shoreline, which does away with the public beach. If you build a reef off the coast, you break the back of the waves, you can do beach nourishment, you can protect private property, and you can continue to maintain those all-important public beaches. So we're excited to be working with Reefer Retreat. We got Friends of Rincon is a group of is an organization that represents a lot of the communities in North Ventura County. Beacon is one that is a very important organization that we've had a lot of conversations with, located in the South Central Coast. We've also had a number of conversations with Hope Ranch, Save Our Sands, or SOS, out of Oceanside, and the Seacoast Preservation Association down out of Encinitas. So we're looking to build coalitions with different local and statewide organizations that are like-minded with us, that they care about the beaches, they care about the environment, they care about our communities. Next slide, please. We've done a number of public presentations personally. You can take these all the way to the bottom. The Ventura County Board of Supervisors, the Malibu Association of Realtors, Santa Barbara Sea Level Rise Adaptation Plan Committee, the Santa Barbara Region Chamber of Commerce, the Goleta Chamber of Commerce, Malibu Chamber of Commerce. We've made several presentations to CAR, and today's just another add-on to that. Carpinteria Association on Sea Level Rise, presentations, a number of them to the California Coastal Commission itself, Save Our Sands Oceanside, and the Seacoast Protection Alliance. So we've been busy out there trying to spread the word. Next slide, please. We've met with a number of individual and important officials, coastal commissioners who have actually reached out to us directly to interface with them. The Executive Director, Jack Ainsworth, Madeline Cavallari, who is the Coastal Commission Program Manager on Sea Level Rise, the senior planning staff in Humboldt County, the City of Pacifica. We've met with the planning consultants for Carpinteria, who were hired to help map out and update the LCP for Carpinteria. We've met with council members for Malibu, several Long Beach, City of Long Beach council members, the senior planning staff for the City of Del Mar, Newport Beach. Recently, the City of San Clemente, Oceanside, in Santa Barbara. And it's important to note that we're starting to get a name, Smart Coast California, as a resource for these different cities and counties to reach out to, in addition with our groups of realtors up and down the state. That's a really important aspect of what it is we're doing, because we want to have a seat at the table, and we want to have a voice that is representing the realtors and the property owners within these communities. Next slide, please. So I'll just move quickly on this, and this will be available for all of you, so you don't need to rush around and take quick notes and photographs, etc. We can make this available, but we're updating this weekly. And you can go to the next slide, Krista. You can see we've got these different priorities with these different jurisdictions on where they are with going through the LCP process. Would you go back one, Krista, please? So we have we've got red, yellow, and green, and basically LCP, for those who are unfamiliar, local coastal program. The Coastal Commission for 5 years now has been giving grant money to these different counties and cities to update their local coastal programs and to incorporate, ideally in the eyes of the Coastal Commission, managed retreat, which is something I'm going to embellish upon as we get towards the end of this presentation, that we candidly got some problems with. Managed retreat basically means that ultimately you let the property and the improvements fall into the ocean. So the number one priorities, the ones in red, are the ones which are most imminent, where they're already having public hearings. Next slide, please. The ones in yellow are right around the corner. They're coming up fast, and we're trying to get out in front of this. While we create this organization, we've been trying to do effective work, and so we've been running really quickly to get out in front of the wave, if you will pardon the pun, but it's one that comes up in conversation a lot. And next slide, please. And then there's a number of them that are a little bit further down the pike in regards to us having to deal with that. Next slide, please. So let me just take this all the way to the bottom. Putting this out here, these are different AORs and GADs that we've worked with. And again, this is something that that Matt and Marta and Krista have been really trying to emphasize, which is we're here as a statewide organization. But what's hugely important is that the local AORs and GADs, that they carry the water. There you go, another pun with apologies. We're available to back you up at public hearings. We do the analysis on the LCP on individual policies and regulations which are being proposed, and we'll feed that to you. But at the end of the day, what's most important is that the local individual realtors and their organizations are the ones which are weighing in. Nobody knows the community better than the realtors that have been working there for many, many years and know the elected officials that they need to interface with directly. This may change a little bit when it gets to the Coastal Commission hearing level itself with SEC, but it's still going to be hugely important that the AORs and the GADs are involved at the Coastal Commission level as well. And I probably should embellish very briefly on the process. The way that these local coastal programs are adopted and are amended is those regulations go through the local planning process. There's a lot of public hearings, goes to the Planning Commission, then it goes to the Board of Supervisors of the City Council, and they adopt their draft LCP or LCP amendment, and then they send it up to the Coastal Commission. And the Coastal Commission staff writes a staff report, and they make recommendations for what are called suggested modifications on what was adopted at the local level. And then the Coastal Commission itself deliberates on it. And then that is set back to the local county or city for final adoption. And there's been examples recently over this very contentious managed retreat issue where these are being sent back to the local jurisdiction, and the local jurisdiction says, no, we're not doing this. This is economic suicide for us, and the managed retreat, especially the way the Coastal Commission wants to interpret it, and I probably should touch base on this right now as well. The Coastal Commission wants to consider only businesses and residences which existed before 1977 as to be existing structures worthy of protection, because you cannot have a shoreline protection device for a new structure. Well, the Coastal Act doesn't say that. It says existing development. And this is something that as an organization, SEC is very concerned about. There's been several efforts to amend the Coastal Act itself so that it means pre-1977. Those have not passed. We think that if in fact it was what the legislature meant when they wrote the law, they would have said that. So as an organization, we disagree with the position that existing development means only homes and businesses before 1977. Could we get the next slide, please? So we've been involved with publications and media. You can just take these to the bottom, Chris, thank you. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of them. And candidly, the press in California is extremely one-sided in regards to this particular issue. You're either somebody that believes that these communities should be allowed to fall into the sea, or you're a denier and you don't believe in the science. We do not concur with that all or nothing black or white aspect of this as an organization. We believe that there's a lot of middle ground, that it's much more nuanced, that there's science varies in regards to how fast this process will happen in certain sections of the coastline, whether or not it will happen at all. We would also point out that, as Dr. Griggs just showed you, the vast majority of the California coastline is undeveloped. It's not going to be controversial to have managed retreat on huge, again, the vast majority of the California coastline, Big Sur, Northern California, Central California, the majority of it. What we're really going to be talking about is controversial are going to be these communities that are established, your Malibus, Laguna Beach, San Diego, Santa Barbara, all up and down the coastline, which is a smaller percentage of the coastline, but hugely important from an economic and cultural standpoint. And what are we going to do about those communities which are right on the shoreline currently today, pre-Coastal Act? Next slide, please. So one of the things that we have been putting out there forward, which is not part of the conversation, whether it be in the press, whether it be with the Coastal Commission itself. Typically, I attend every single Coastal Commission hearing, or at the local level, is the issue of private property for public use. Now, you heard Dr. Griggs say in his presentation that we need to choose whether or not we're going to have private property or whether or not we're going to have public beaches. Now, I hope the man's wrong. Now, he's forgotten more than I or anybody else on this presentation will know about coastal geomorphology. There are some things which he touched base on in regards to groins and offshore reefs and such, where we might be able to protect both the beaches and the private property. But that's not the point for this part of our presentation, because really and truly, for that smaller percentage of the coastline, which is already developed, we are talking about this inherent tension if you're going to have manage or treat between public beaches and private property. And so the Coastal Commission and a number of these local counties and cities want to prohibit property owners from armoring to protect their home and their businesses. Armoring being rock revetments, seawalls, things of that nature. And we think that if they do that, that constitutes a regulatory taking without just compensation. We believe that that's unconstitutional and that that's illegal. Can we see the next slide, please? So the Fifth Amendment of the Federal Constitution, most people think immediately of not having to testify against yourself, but it specifies that in the takings clause that nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Now, when the framers put that into our Constitution, they put it in there with the consideration that the government would take private property to build a dam, a canal, and they need to pay the property owner for that. But as land use regulations have evolved over the years, the courts have mandated that should a regulatory agency not allow somebody to use their property, that's inverse condemnation, that's a taking, it's compensable, the government has to pay for that. And then right below that, you've got our Constitution, for the state of California. And this is just a little excerpt from it. Says, possessing and protecting property. I want to read it a little bit more expanded out though. All people are by nature free and independent and have inalienable rights. This is Article 1, Section 1 of our California Constitution. Among these are enjoying and defending life and liberty, acquiring, possessing, and protecting property, and pursuing and obtaining safety, happiness, and privacy. So it is an inalienable constitutional right in California that you can own your property and you can protect your property. So when the government passes a regulation that says you can't protect your property, they're essentially condemning it. They have to buy it if they're going to do that. And then there's the Coastal Act itself, which was adopted in 1976, and you have section 30010, and you almost never see this one in staff reports, okay? It's not the most popular section or provision of the Coastal Act itself, but it's right there, and it specifies that neither the Coastal Commission nor a local jurisdiction, a city or a county, can deny a permit in a manner which will take or damage private property for public use without the payment of just compensation therefore. It's right there in the Coastal Act itself. And the very important aspect of this is, should they go down the route of managed retreat, they being the cities, the counties, and the coastal commission, ultimately, if they do not allow the property owners who have no place to retreat to, that if you've got a huge parcel of land, and when you get to the useful end of the life of the project, you can rebuild it further inland like they showed doing the highway, that's fantastic. Okay, but if you got nowhere to go, if you've got Pacific Coast Highway at your back and the ocean in front of you, and you cannot literally rebuild your home and they don't let you protect it, then ultimately the government has to buy it. That's the constitutional principle here. And the thing that we seek as an organization to educate the local counties and cities is, should they adopt these in their local coastal program, it's not the California Coastal Commission that's going to have to pay for these properties, which are going to be required to fall into the sea. It's going to be the local cities and the local counties. So next slide, please. I think we already covered this, so next slide, please. And so what's coming in the future? Krista, you can take this all the way to the bottom. Now, we've got our web page up and going, and we're providing educational seminars. We're reaching out to you directly, and you can reach out to us. But there are a number of these LCPs which are coming down the pike, some of them very soon. My office right now is updating the matrix on all these LCPs. We're going to be sending them up to the staff there at SCC, and those are going to be posted on the web page. But those are the ones where we really need to be getting involved, because I will close with this. There's an important word here, an important word at this time in our collective lives on sea level rise. It's called precedent. And the precedent has not been firmly established yet. And there's some communities where managed retreat will be fine, where they don't have a lot of shoreline development. They've got sand dunes, and we are completely, as an organization, supportive of them adopting managed retreat. But there's going to be other cities and counties which are much more intensely developed, and they may be less interested in having managed retreat. And what we're observing at SCC is there's different tiers and levels, and they're struggling to find a way to come up with appropriate regulations where they're not condemning people's property, but they can still address sea level rise. It's very complicated, and it's beyond the purview of our presentation to you today. However, if there's curiosity and interest in individual counties and cities, then SCC stands ready to provide those educational workshops and to bring those forward and assist so that you can be constructively engaged in your local community. So with that, I think it's probably time for me to wrap it up and make myself available for any questions that you may have.
Excellent.